Welcome, Mizzou basketball fans and hoopheads alike. This is Matt Watkins, and today we'll be previewing Mizzou's 2025-2026 roster in the lead up to the new season. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about Sebastian Mack. Mr. Mack is an exciting transfer from UCLA. He was often relied upon to be their late clock magician. He's not quite a point guard, but he's not quite a combo guard. We just like to consider him a ball player. He did see big minutes as a freshman, starting 30 games for the Bruins, averaging about 26.7 minutes per game. He saw those numbers fall a little bit in his sophomore campaign. He only started one game and saw his minutes drop to about 21 per. Now that reduction had a little bit to do with him, but it had a lot more to do with the UCLA Bruins roster. They saw an influx of talent. They weren't real good when he was a freshman, but he saw several new front court and back court mates alike join him in what was a pretty good season for UCLA. They ended up in very competitive fashion in the Big Ten Conference and made the NCAA tournament with a decent seed. His goal in 25-26 will be expanding his game and bolstering his role as the number 2 guard in Missouri's offense. Just as a bit of a background on Mr. Mack, he is a junior. He's a guard. There's no doubt about it. What kind of guard that will kind of be fleshed out as the season goes on. He is from Chicago, Illinois. He played high school basketball at Coronado High School in Nevada. He played the AAU circuit. He jumped around a little bit, but his last season was with the Oakland Soldiers, which you may have recognized that name from recent developments. That's where Jason Crow, Mizzou's top 5 signee for the 2026 class, played. His father, Sam, played 7 NBA seasons, so he comes from a good stock. When we're looking at his 24, 25 stats, he averaged about 9.5 points a game, 2.1 rebounds a game, just a shade under 2 assists a game, and he almost got 1 steal a game. Looking at his more advanced numbers, he played 52.4% of minutes for UCLA. That was 6th most on the team. His 24.6 usage rate was 2nd on the team. That's a pretty high number. His offensive rating hovered around 105, which is above average, but not quite as high as you'd like to see it. That was 10th on the team. He had a 47.3 EFG, that's effective field goal percentage. That was 8th on the team. But notably, and something we've talked about in recent years with Mizzou, is his free throw rate was 57.4%, which was 3rd on the team. That means he got to the line quite a bit, and that's something I think that was attractive to Dennis Gates this offseason when he was picked up in the portal. When you look at his overall Bayesian performance rating, which is overall offensive defensive number, that was 3.59 points above 100 points or 100 possessions. So if you look at that, he's better than average, and that number ranked about 7th on UCLA's team. So you've got a pretty good player here, but there's some things that you need to work on. Where I see him fitting in on this year's roster is he's likely going to be the starting combo guard. That was a little bit of a weak spot coming out of last year's roster with the departure of Caleb Grill and Tamar Bates, and of course Marquez Warwick as well. He's a sturdy perimeter defender. He really on offense is probably most described as a rugged downhill driver. Some of the skill components of his game, which we'll talk about here in just a minute when we look at the film, aren't quite there, but his mentality is exactly what you want out of a starting guard, someone who wants to get to the paint, get to the rim, absorb contact, finish at the rim, do those things that are necessary to win games in February and March when the SEC schedule really ramps up. He's a known quantity playing in a high major league against high major athletes, and that's something that you really want to have added into your roster at this point. When we look at low major transfers with gaudy numbers who transfer up, it's not always a clean transition, but with guys like Sebastian Mack coming from UCLA, coming from a really good program, you can kind of assume what his numbers are going to be, and often they will improve a little bit upon that. So As far as his role on the team, he's likely an off-ball player, but when it gets the late clock situations, I think you can count on him to be a little bit more involved as a primary scoring threat when he's attacking off the wings. So, we put together projections each offseason, and I see him probably about 66% of the minutes, which that's a pretty high number. I think that will rate as high as third on Mizzou's roster next year. I see him at about a 25% usage rate, which is a slight increase. That could be first. He's going to be jockeying, I think, with Mark Mitchell on who gets the most offensive touches. And, if you put all the numbers together, I think he could average between 11 and 12 points a game, which would be a very good boost for Mizzou's offense with everything that they've lost last year. So what we're going to do now is jump into some of his film and talk a little bit about first his jump shot, which I think is something that with Sebastian Mack hasn't quite been where it needs to be. But I think with a few tweaks, he may be able to improve upon that. And, if he is able to get up into the 35% three-point shooting, I think that could really make a big difference for Mizzou's offense. So let's take a look at some of his film here and what we've got. One thing I want you to focus in on with Sebastian Mack is his feet. He is number 12 here. He's got the long sleeve shirt on, but I just want you to watch his feet. In these first few clips, his feet are not always going where they should be. You're going to see him kick out his feet. You're not always going to see a clean landing. I think a lot of that's due to his natural inclination to absorb contact and get to the free throw line. But you see him drift on that particular attempt. He's drifting into the shot. You ideally want to be going up and down. And for these first few clips here, I've obviously picked shots that he missed. He does make some of these, but it's much more common to see him miss shots when his feet are going all over the place. As a jump shooter, you really want a sturdy foundation and something that's repeatable. Again, he's drifting into his shot. Again, drifting into his shot. His feet are landing inside the three-point line when he's taking shots from beyond them. Same deal. And as you see, he's missing a lot of these shots because it's hard to have that repeatable shot when your feet aren't under you. Now that we've taken a look at some of his misses, we do have some examples of where he does have a solid foundation and his jump shot form looks really good and the results are a lot better. This will be important for Missouri to suss out in the offseason, trying to get that repeatable jump shot, because if you can get a 35% or higher jump shooter out of Sebastian Mack, he turns in from a really quality option to potentially a very, very good one. Straight up and down. Shot goes in. Another good-looking shot goes down. These are things that you have to work on in the offseason, and when you really hammer in the fundamentals, you can see big jumps, and I think that's something that we may see from Mack this year. And I assume the staff and all Mizzou fans alike are hoping for that, because that could really be the difference between a good team and a great team, is his ability to knock down these shots. Again, we've got some quiet feet here. Great looking jump shot. So now that we've talked a little bit about his jump shooting, I want to move over into more his bread and butter, and that's his pick and roll activity. He was really, really good when we're talking about ball screens, and he did it in a variety of ways. But where I really found him best is, I'm going to freeze it here real quick, is when he is attacking off the wings and what we call slot ball screens, especially on the left side where he can get to his right hand into the lane. He was a force. I mean, he was really, really good. Out of players with 80 plus possessions in ball screens, Sebastian Mack ranks seventh nationally in efficiency with over a 1.1 points per possession. That is incredible offense. And, it wasn't a low usage situation where he just did it every now and then. That was 26% of his offense. So let's see exactly how he gets it done. He can obviously get all the way to the rim, got a good bounce there, but he is just a bull when it comes to getting into the paint, and that's something that you really like to see. He's an aggressive player. He really gets his head down, and when he gets on a lane, he is really hard to bump off of it. And again, we're talking about a left side slot ball screen here where he can get to his right hand. Has a nice little finishing touch here with a runner. He's done pretty well with his runners over the years. He's not super efficient like a Sean East, but it is a good option for him when he's getting into the paint. Again, nice little teardrop there over Illinois' big man. There he is in his coveted spot along the left wing. When you have the ability to hit jump shots, and we've talked about his jump shooting a little bit, but you also have that mid-range runner game, and then also the ability to get all the way to the rack. His physical ability really stands out, and it's something that, when you take him and put him next to an Anthony Robinson, next to a Mark Mitchell, having physical drivers like that can make a difference. It's something that teams really want to get into nowadays with the ability to get to the line, force the officials into the game, rack up fouls on opponents, get easy points from the free throw line. It's a vital component and something that Missouri really relied on last year. And something that I think they will probably be wanting to do again this year with the makeup of their team. He can also go left. We're going to look at some of his high ball screens here now, which weren't quite as efficient as his slot ball screens, but he was still quite good. I believe he scored 59 points on 60 possessions in the high ball screen, which works out to just under 1.00 points per possession, which is pretty good. It's not quite at the level of Anthony Robinson, but it's good enough. And I do love his game against Wisconsin here. He really took over in the second half when they were down a couple possessions and really willed them to a gutty win. And his physicality in that game really stood out as a guy who they couldn't stop. That changed a little bit in Indianapolis, as you can see by the score in the rematch here. But it wasn't because of Sebastian Mack. He was still up to his old tricks and able to do what he's known to do. Nice up and under. Again, a variety of finishing packages, which is important. Tough finish there. Another incredible circus finish over Ivisic, a guy that Mizzou had a little trouble with at times last year, and his twin, which both are going to be playing for Illinois this year. But he absorbs contact. That's something I want you to really embrace. It's something when he gets to the paint, he is not afraid of getting bumped off. He will go in and finish despite that, and he's going to rack up fouls. That's something that really, really, really stood out. And he's quick. Despite being as physical as he is, he does have a quick first step and is able to beat guys turning the corner. Nice offhand finish to beat the help to the rim. Splits the defenders quickly, manipulates the help. Really, really impressive. So that's a taste of his ball screen offense. We've talked a little bit about the shooting. That's a work in progress. It's something I think that can be fixed. We talked a little bit about the ball screens. Now let's get into his defense a little bit. It was something that it surprised me a little that he was effective as he was, and I guess I shouldn't have been surprised knowing that he's a Mick Cronin recruit and player. When you look at Mick Cronin at UCLA, they're always a sound defensive team. Offensively, they can leave a little meat on the bone, but when you get to the defensive end, he's really well coached, and we're going to see that. He's a physical presence up at the point of attack. He's not someone that's going to be easily pushed around, beaten off the dribble drive. He's well schooled, well coached, and he's got the physical attributes and the ability to contest without fouling, which is important there. But these next few clips are really going to show you what type of defender he is. Does a good job navigating the screen, gets bumped but still recovers. Helps force a turnover. I think Sebastian Mack was the only UCLA Bruin that showed up to this game against Wisconsin. Wisconsin had something like 17 threes. It was incredible to watch. There's former Tiger John Tonje. Again, physical defender. Had the speed to get around the screen and still beat his man to his spot and not get bumped off. Another player that gave Mizzou some fits here is Kylan Boswell. Did get called for the reach in there, but he did a very good job navigating around and keeping him in front. Here he is on Yakachonis, gets the quick strip. Now, Sebastian Mack isn't quite as adept at creating turnovers as, say, Anthony Robinson, but he has been good, and a lot of his work on getting turnovers has come on savvy double teams where he's able to use his ability, his strength to fight through defenders and get to the double and get some takeaways, as we saw right there. Very good recovery for the jump ball. I mean, there's a lot to like in this film. A lot of the things that he does And here we are against Tennessee. A lot of the things that he does well are things that will fit well into Mizzou's offense. Being physical with screeners, being able to get around the ball screens, being able to double team guys. Those are all prized attributes in a player that's going to be hopefully starting for Mizzou this year. And by hopefully, I mean, I believe his ability will allow him to do that. Quick double team. Springs the transition opportunity. Spring a double team. Gets the takeaway. Quick hands leads to the quick bucket. Now there's advantageous doubles. So that's what we've got for you on film. You know, when you look at Sebastian Mack, I think he's a very good addition to this roster. I think he does a lot of things that Mizzou wants to do. I think the big thing that can take him from being a very good addition to a savvy, perhaps underrated, excellent addition is his ability to hit those jump shots. You know, he was a 30% three-point shooter for his first 2 years at UCLA. Mick Cronin, again, not an offensive-minded coach. So, you know, when you get into a system with Dennis Gates, who has had an ability to eke out a little bit more efficiency out of guys, especially on the jump shots, you know, I think that combination, that marriage could really prove to be beneficial for both players, and especially when he brings over the defensive schooling, the defensive ability that he has, and that rugged nature of getting into the paint, something that Mizzou thrives on. I think this is going to be a really good addition. We'll see what happens this season, but you know, as far as spring portal additions, I think Sebastian Mack may have gone under a little underappreciated. So anyway, that's all I have for you today, and we'll be back with more player previews, and I hope you enjoyed it. And until then, we'll see ya.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. Rock M Radio is the official podcast network of Rock M Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of Rock M Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock M Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find Rock M Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not the Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. And we'll be back with more episodes of Rock M Radio coming to you soon.